leadership as a skill and not as a position. I welcome Andy Coley from Game Studio Training to the panel. He's got loads of experience on this. If we give him enough time, maybe we've got time for questions at the end. What do you think?
Yep.
Over to you.
That.
Give him a round of
applause.
applause.
So I'm just going to give people time to just come in from the outside. Cool. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Andy Coley. Really pleased to be here speaking at this Games conference about the skills of leadership. Now, anybody here from Kevin's session earlier? Yes. Excellent. One person who was already hosting. Well, that's great because he spoke about a number of different elements which work within games development in terms of emotional intelligence and the importance of that. I'm going to recap some of those things because I really believe that leadership is a skill, not just a position. You know, it's something that I feel is so important within the games industry. Now, I come from a web and tech background. So I used to do websites, web development. I've been around. Kevin mentioned earlier, the ZX Spectrum 81. I was playing that and coding that back in the day. I spent hours with my parents coding in games from the back of the Spectrum magazine, recording them to tape, going the next being, and then debugging them, because of course there'd be a typo in there somewhere as well. So that got me fascinated about the process of making code and making games. So I'm so pleased to be able to support the games industry as well. So I am a leadership development trainer. I'm an award-winning TEDx speaker. If you want more about my life, my potted life history, you can go onto TEDx and watch that. I'm also an author, a coach, and a facilitator. And I've got a book that's out next month that, hot off the press, arrived in my house on Friday. I've got 10 author copies. And you can win this one, the first ever copy, if you pre-register at the end of this. And I'll pick somebody from people that do that. Here, I'll sign it for you, and you can take it away as the very first copy as well. So, who have I worked with? I work with Wushu Studios. I've just run a leadership development training for them, working virtually with 2 cohorts of their managers to support their leadership development training. I work with Ubisoft, supporting their teams around how do they have good, safe interactions with players. Lo-fi games, Supermassive. I've done some work with the Power Group, Dressed, Lucid, lots of different people within the industry. Maybe I could work with some of your studios as well. That's what I'm really interested in. Because I know that not many people invest in leadership development training. In fact, 82% of leaders or managers have never had any form of leadership development training. 82% of people have never had formal leadership development training. And yet we expect our leaders to just be able to pick it up and get on with it. And the problem is that only 27% of people describe their manager as actually effective. Would you say your manager is effective? There's a few shakes there. If you're sat here with your manager, by the way, you don't have to answer this. But you can answer it in your head. Yeah? But it's so surprising how ineffective people feel that their managers and their bosses are. And that's often because they just don't yet have the skill to know how to do it. 49% have quit their job because the relationship with their boss went sour. Is that one familiar for anybody? I definitely know of instances where I've done that or other people around me have done that as well. And only 18% of people feel that they can trust their manager. 18%. Now, I remember watching a talk at Pocket Gamer Connect last year talking about psychological safety. And the speaker there was talking about the fact that psychological safety, feeling safe at work, trust is such an important part of that. If you don't trust your manager to be able to go to them, to support you, to coach you, to work with you, you're going to have a very difficult time when it comes to getting to work and feeling safe at that work environment. So yeah, I believe that leadership is a skill, and it's not a skill that comes with a job title. It's not a skill you get when you get your first member of your team. And it's not a superpower. It's not something that just suddenly clicks on and comes in overnight. So I believe it's something that can be learned. And like all skills, sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we suck at it. And recognizing what we need to do in order to improve and build up on our leadership development training is why I'm here. So some of the foundations of leadership that I feel are really important are, first of all, emotional intelligence. Now, if you were at Kevin's talk earlier, we would have recapped on a very similar set of, a very similar list. So self-awareness, becoming aware of how you're showing up, what's happening in terms of your emotions. When you're having those emotions, be it frustration or happiness, what do you then do to regulate those emotions? Because if you're frustrated with yourself, do you take that out on the team? If somebody's upset you, how do you deal with that? And then having the social awareness and knowing what's going on around with you within the team, and building good relationships. Good relationships are so important when it comes to leading and supporting teams. And ultimately, becoming aware of how you learn. Learning about how you learn is a really important skill. And for me, learning is a very simple equation. Learning is knowledge plus experience. So you go on a course about something. You read a book about something. Here's one. You take in and process some information, but until you do something with the information, it doesn't become learning. And once you've done something, you might get it wrong, you might get it right, you might give yourself some feedback, because feedback is the thing that loops that back round to becoming new knowledge. And learning is an iterative process. There are basically 4 steps to learning. We start off unconsciously incompetent. Like, we don't know what we don't know. Then we become consciously incompetent. Like, we know it, but we suck at it because we're still rubbish, we're learning. Then we're getting better, we're becoming consciously competent. We still have to think about it, but we're able to do it much more easily, until ultimately you become unconsciously competent. We just do it. So any skill you've ever learned, you've gone through those 4 stages of learning. Riding a bike, driving a car, all of these things, from technical skill sets to using a mobile phone to anything that you've ever done, you've gone through those 4 stages. You've sucked at it in order to get better at it. It does not mean that you have failed at everything because you haven't managed to do one important component. Now, I work particularly around the field of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Anybody here ever heard of NLP? Excellent. So NLP in my world is neuro-linguistic programming, by the way, not the AI, natural language processing side. But NLP is basically the study of the way the mind works. How you take in and process information, how that information becomes your version of the world that you are then experiencing and living through, and how we represent or represent that in our body language, in the words that we're using. So our words have meaning to us. How we respond as in physically or within our micromuscle expressions has meaning to us. And then ultimately that affects our behavior. So what we do is an end result of how we feel, that is an end result of how we thought. And so NLP is basically the study of what makes you you. Why are you unique? Why do you have a different perspective to somebody else in the team? Why is it that when you've asked them to do something, they just don't understand you? Well, it's because ultimately they've got their version of the event, you've got your version of the event. We've got 50 people in this room right now. We're all having 50 different versions of the talk that I'm giving right now. If we all went to the cinema together and watched the same film being beamed on the same screen at the same time, we'd be having different experiences of the film. Because depending on what you thought of the actors, what you thought of the genre, what you thought of, what podcast you listened to, you will be having a different experience to perhaps me. If you stick Marvel on anything, I'm there. 3 hours of CGI fest, I love it. My wife is not that bothered, I'll be honest, unless it's got Chris Hemsworth in. Yeah, but she'd rather watch something in black and white with a plot and probably some subtitles. But the film is a film. How you experience the film is your version of that. So NLP is about what makes you you. So it's really useful then from a leadership perspective of going, well, how have I become the leader that I am today? How am I managing my team in this particular way? Because the shadow that's been cast upon you and how you lead your team is ultimately the summation of all the different managers you've had in your life. If you've had fantastic managers, that stuff will have rubbed off on you. You'll manage in a fantastic way. If you've had rubbish managers, then maybe some of that stuff will have rubbed off on you as well. So if you're concerned about what your team are doing or not doing, sometimes that introspection, that self-awareness comes back to, well, how am I maybe helping to make this happen? And that's what I talk about, the shadow that you cast upon the team. And sometimes we have good leaders and sometimes we have bad leaders. I had a brilliant manager when I used to work at IBM. I did a degree with them back in the sort of mid-90s. I had a brilliant people manager. She could manage a team. We were in the research team from me doing my degree with IBM all the way through to the Sandals and Beards Brigade, as I used to call them at the time, although I realise I'm now their age as well, basically who'd been there since the dawn of computing, just working away, doing their research projects. And she could basically take that team of 80 from the inexperienced to the experienced. And I also had a really bad manager's experience when I worked with a sales team. I was doing the web and tech development. And the sales manager, in order to motivate his team when he was having a really bad day, used to come in and bark at them, and he wouldn't let them sit at their desks until they'd made their first sale. Because he thought that would motivate them. Now, the competitive ones, yep, that would kind of work. They want to please him. They want to be the first person. They want to be the best. Yep, they got on with it and made a sale. But I remember one poor guy, 11:30 in the morning, still standing at his desk, basically unable to sell a packet of DVDs, because they were selling DVDs and printers at the time, and was in bits. That's not motivating your team. That's the experience of having a really bad manager as well. And also note, mindset shifts happened. That's one of my other talks I do. Shift happens. You can change your mind at any time. You have that ability to think differently about stuff. So in terms of transformative leadership, context is really important. How mature is your team right now? Teams evolve and go through different stages. You've probably heard the forming, storming, norming, performing. So a team comes together and it forms. They're all nice to each other for a while. They get to know each other. Everybody's like working on this big project, this big vision. Yeah, they're all getting on. But at some point, then an ego kicks in. Well, how come they get that job? I should be doing this thing. And you get a little bit of behaviors where people aren't getting on. Conflict starts to happen. That's normal as people are finding their way. Until it gets to the point where they normalize how they work together, they get on, and they just structures, processes, they appreciate people's experience. And then ultimately, they're performing really well. And so recognizing where's your team in that development is important as a leader. And each team and each project requires a different approach. So there's a model called the 3 E's model that I always teach when I'm doing leadership development. When it comes to the team, first of all, you need to set expectations. What are you expecting the team to do? What's the end goal? How are they going to do it? Then you need to create engagement with the team, getting them on board with the what are they going to do and how are they going to do it? And then create empowerment, letting them just get off and get on with it. Because when you do that, ultimately you get performance within the team. In order to do that, you need to change your leadership style. Because initially within a team, you need to be quite at the center of the team. You need to be in control. Then you need to move into becoming a supporter and a coach. And finally, you need to get out of their way and trust them to get on with it. And of course, depending on the person, depending on the stage of the project, you'll need to flip between these different stages. If you've got somebody inexperienced, you need to be a little bit more directive with them. If you've got somebody who's learning and coming up through the ranks, probably a bit more coaching, supporting, mentoring from you or other people within the team works really well. And if you've got a mature team, highly skilled, highly experienced, get out their way and stop micromanaging them and just trust them to get on with it. But these different stages have really good uses. Control mode is also really good if there's an emergency. Yeah, if there's a problem, if there's something that has to get sorted out, come in, take control, get into that control mode, set the expectations, get the project going again. The engagement part is about creating people so they feel on board with it, feel part of it. But you can't stay here. This is the part where people love to be, by the way, as a manager. Want to be everybody's friend, want to make sure that we're all living this dream together, supporting each other. But sometimes when you do that, the team start to go, well, hang on, why are you managing it? I'm probably a bit more experienced. I should be the leader and not you. And this is where you need to make sure you get more strategic and create that empowerment. Let the team get on with it and do it for themselves. When your team have trust in you and you have trust in them, that's when the magic really starts to happen and the team perform at their best. So that transformative leadership is a really important thing to look at. And the last main section I'm going to cover today is coaching culture. I love creating coaching cultures within teams. Because for me, coaching has had such a fundamental shift in the way that my mindset happens. And when people get on board with the reasons why they want to do it, rather than being told what to do, because let's face it, if I tell you what to do, you must do this, you should do that, most of us, or certainly my little inner 5-year-old goes, no, thank you. Yeah, I haven't decided I want to do that yet. Whereas actually, if you encourage somebody, work with them, support them, get them to come up with the reasons as to why they're doing what they're doing and how they're going to do it, that's when the coaching happens. And coaching is slightly different to mentoring. Coaching is helping the person come to their own conclusions. Whereas mentoring is giving your skill set once they've reached the extent of their knowledge. And don't be afraid of the impact of small, tiny changes. You're probably aware of the book Atomic Habits, yeah, by James Clear, and it's a fantastic book that talks about the power of small shifts. Those tiny, tiny changes have an incremental change over time. Now that might be changing your thinking, that might be changing your behavior, that might be changing your communication style. It doesn't matter what you change, just change something. Anything you can do then has a cumulative effect to make you even better. In the book he talks, if you get 1% better every day, and to be honest, it's quite an ask, but if you were to get 1% better every day, by the end of a year, you're actually just under 38 times better than you were at the start of the year. Quite a lot. And then listening, good listening skills. listening is such an underrated skill when it comes to coaching. Most people want to be able to talk. I am a thinker-talker. By having somebody who's got the space to listen to me, I often solve my stuff just by discussing it. So wait is quite an important one. Why am I talking? Because often the reason we're talking is because we know how to solve it for them. But if you keep solving stuff for people, they're going to keep coming to you to get their problems solved. Whereas if you allow them to self-own their answers to their things, again, that's when they go, oh, I know how to do this. So rather than constantly coming to you for the answers, and I had this once with a team, they used to keep coming to the head of the department, they'd knock on the door, go, oh, hi, here's my problem, solve it for me. And he got so fed up with his entire day basically being taken up by solving other people's stuff. And so by encouraging them to answer their own questions and asking a very similar question, what do you want to have happen? How are you going to make that happen? You know, if I wasn't here for the day, how would you solve this? Some very simple coaching questions. Then what they would do is they come up to the door and go, oh, I already know what he's going to ask, and then they go off and solve it. Or if they didn't know how to solve it, they'd come to him with a couple of solutions and ask his opinion. And it's much better if they come to you with a couple of solutions rather than a big sack of problems for you to sort out. Because it's like then they're just giving it to you. So encouraging a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset, and thinking about what needs to happen for you, your team, in order to encourage and to grow. Other leadership skills that I think are really important are being able to manage conflict and change, supporting growth in other people, and your professional persona and networking. And finally, that ability to be able to reflect and plan ahead. Now, this is a 20-minute talk. Normally, when I do this, it's about 45 minutes. So I'd have a chance to cover these other sections. But I thought I'd just cover these key topic areas today, this one, in this talk. But remember, leadership is a skill and not a position. It's something that you can learn. So if I can support you, if you're in a position within the studio, or if you're in a position to want to get support, there's a QR code that takes you to my website, gamestudiotraining.com, or I've got some information at the back. Come and see me after the talk, and I can talk to you about that. But most importantly, I've got a book out next month. So if you want to win a copy of my book today, the first copy signed for you, scan that QR code. And for everybody that fills in that, couple of questions to pre-register, because the book's not out till the 25th February. I will then contact you through email, or I'll hook up with you on LinkedIn, and I'll let you know, here's my telephone number, come and phone me and we'll sign it today. Okay, sound good? And for anybody else, if you don't win the book, then you'll get the opportunity of getting it for 99p when the book launches. So I can't say fairer than that. But yeah, I've got support from within the games industry from the books. This is Jenny, formerly of Sumo Group, their L&D, head of L&D. She's had the chance of reading through the book. Phil Foxton, many of you might know Phil as well. I do quite a lot of work with Phil. Again, just looking at the way that we can encourage you and your leadership development as well. I've got 2 minutes. My name's Andy Coley. Any questions?
Yeah, give him a round of applause first of all. Thank you, that's great. So we've got a question in the middle of the room here. Has anybody got a stick, Marty? Yeah, here we go. We've got time for just one question, so.
Hello.
Hello.
You said that learning was like knowledge plus experience.
Yes.
And I just want to know, sometimes people don't have the time to teach leadership, like learn leadership in a group. So how would you learn and improve on leadership independently?
So I think that comes back to that self-awareness and that piece around, right, when I've just done something, if in a leadership or a management perspective, and for me, leadership is vision, direction, strategic. Management is about people, process, and how we're going to get something done. So when I've just done something, tried to talk to a team, done a performance management session, run a discussion piece, like whatever it is, take a little bit of time after that to debrief yourself, okay? What did I do really well? What would I change next time? Because you can't change the past, but you can change what comes the next time around you do the same thing. So that's where the importance of giving yourself a bit of time to do a debrief becomes really important. Because then what you do is you're reprogramming your future self to be different. So the next time you have that meeting, do the thing, performance manager, whatever, it's like you've already pre-changed your code for the future you. So as a piece without getting external diagnostics or mentoring or coaching is probably how I'd recommend anybody approaches anything. That could be from me doing this talk to you showing up at this event and going, did I show up enough? Did I have the right kind of meetings? Whatever it happens to be, give yourself that little bit of time to go, what went well, what didn't go so well, what would I change the next time around I did that thing?
Thank you, Andy.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.